Welcome back to Learning with Merit. Today we are going to start the first video in a tutorial series covering the Java programming language. Here I am with my file open in my Eclipse IDE. My file is called main.java. It's very important how we name our files. Java files will end in .java, and then the name of the file needs to be the name of the class, and I'll show you that in just a second. So first things first, with Java, we need to learn, as in all programming languages, we need to learn how to make comments so that we can make notes in our code in order to learn. So in order to make a single line comment, we need two forward slashes. So we do // and that makes a single line comment for us. If we need to make a multi-line comment, we use a / and an asterisk. And then we end it with the opposite, basically, the asterisk and then the /. And this gives us multiple lines we can work with. So you'll see this is a multi-line comment. This allows us to make notes about our code, and it is a very good practice for you to make comments in your code. It will help you and others understand it. And you'll notice if you look in the Java API, if you look in the library that comes with Java, that it is heavily commented so that you can understand what's going on as you use the code. Here we have a special type of multi-line comment called a Java doc comment, and these are used for commenting an entire class or an entire method, and they can be extracted into an HTML file using the JDK or Java Development Kit, right? The JDK's Java doc command. You must precede the class or the method header in order to have these extracted into an HTML file. So that means you have to use this before the class or before the method so that it can be extracted correctly using that command. All right, here we have some notes. Here's what we're going to cover. We're going to do a little intro to Java, and then we are going to see our first program and how to write it. So Java is a class-based, object-oriented programming language. It is also a procedural language. Now that may not make a lot of sense to you, especially if this is the first language that you're picking up, but basically you can think of a class as a blueprint, and objects are how we create, or like what we actually build with that blueprint. So it can be like we have a blueprint for a building, and then we actually build the building. It's the same kind of idea. Every file in Java is a class. So in this case, our class for this file will be main with a capital M. It was developed by Sun Microsystems in 1995. It's intended to be write once, run anywhere, or WORA. It's kind of hard to say sometimes. But this was the revolutionary idea behind Java, is that you could take it and write it once, compile it, and then it should be able to run anywhere that Java is installed very easily. Java is compiled into bytecode, so instead of binary files, for example, we have ones and zeros, right? Bytecode is a little different. So binary is represented in zeros and ones. Each 0 and 1 is called a bit. 8 bits is called a byte. Bytes are typically represented as hexadecimal values. Now, I don't want to get too far into what this is and what's going on there, but you can look up plenty of videos on what hexadecimal is and what binary is and how we work with those on YouTube. And I may make a video in the future covering that as well. So basically, this bytecode is interpreted by what we call the JVM. So you need the JVM on your system in order for it to read that code and then execute it. And so Java is sort of a language that is both compiled and interpreted. So you'll see that. It's compiled and interpreted. And it's very interesting. But it makes it run faster, but it also makes it easier to run in lots of different places. So we can run on all platforms that support Java, Java code does not need to be recompiled to run on multiple platforms, which is a great advantage of it. And it remains one of the most popular programming languages today, despite being an older one. It is still used quite often. For example, a very high-profile use of Java was to write Minecraft. So the Java version of Minecraft is written in Java. It's a very interesting thing there. So to check if Java is installed on the command prompt, you can open up a command prompt and type this right here. In place of your name, it will be whatever your username is. and then you'll check the version of Java that way. You need to make sure that you have Java installed, otherwise it will be difficult. You can get you an IDE like this, and it will come with pretty much everything that you need. So every application begins with a class name, and that must match the file name. I'll show you that in just a second. Classes should always start with an uppercase letter. And to compile the programs to bytecode, we use a command called javac. So we'll do javac main.java. Now you can do this on any command prompt as long as you have the Java stuff installed. But in this case, we're using an IDE that will do a lot of this for us just to make our lives a little bit easier. And then to execute the file, you have to run java and then main. You'll notice it's not main.class or main.java here, it's just main, and it will execute for you. So if you're not using this file, main, you should replace it with the name of your file. So whatever the class name is, that's what you're actually going to be calling there. So in this case, it is main, but it could be something else, and you'll see that later as we move along. So Script Kiddie's first program. We are all script kiddies in one way or another. We may be able to use code, but don't always understand everything about how it works. So let's see what it looks like to write our first program. So we're going to use the keyword public and the class keyword, and then call our class main. So the public means that we can access this class outside of this file, and class indicates, of course, we're making a class, and then I have the identifier for the class called main. Then I'm going to use these curly braces here to indicate the area in which I am writing the class. In most classes, there will be other things that we're going to write, but just for this class, because it's a simple class and we're writing our first program, we're going to write the main method. Now, the main method is not to be confused with the main class. And the reason is the main method will show up in every one of your files that you want to have run something in whenever you execute that file. So the main method and the main class are not the same thing. So here we go. We're going to start writing that main class now, or that main method. Now you'll see there's an indent here. We're saying public, static, void, lowercase main with an open and close parentheses. Then inside of those parentheses, we include string, open and close square brackets, and args, and then our curly braces after that. You'll see it's nice and highlighted now. So here we have our basic structure. We have the class declaration, and then indented in that we have the main method. Now there's a lot going on here, and we'll be covering this a lot more in detail later, but here's a basic rundown. Public indicates that this method can be accessed outside of this class. So if I have another file, and I can access this main method from that file. Static indicates that I do not have to have an object in order to call this method. So what this means is that this method belongs to the class and does not belong to an object of the class. There are multiple different ways I can call the method, but in general the main method is called whenever I run the file. So I will never actually end up calling the main method in this file. I will just end up running the file itself. Void is an indication that the method does not return a value. String and args here. String with square brackets is what we call a string array, or it stores multiple string values. Args is the identifier, or the name of that array that stores those values. This is very useful because what it allows us to do is if we wanted to pass in arguments from the command line, we could. Again, in a later file, I'll show you why that's useful. But for now, we want to ignore this. Okay? All we want to do is make sure that we type it out every single time we write our programs so that our programs will work correctly. Later, we will talk a little bit more about how do we manipulate and use this and what exactly is going on with the public, static, void, main, and everything there. Don't worry, we will come back to this later, I promise. All right, so let's look at this. Here we're going to tell the computer to print out hello world, the phrase hello world, to the console. Now I have the console down here, and this is where I get to see the output of my program. And I'm going to drag it back down so we can see what we're coding. So to type out something to the console, we need to create a print statement. Print statement looks like this. You have system.out.println, open and close parentheses, and at the end of the line we're going to have a semicolon. Now right now you may be totally confused as to why we have system.out.println. A quick rundown is system is a class, out would be a particular object in that class, and then println is a method that we are running on that object. Now, that may make no sense to you, but that's just a quick rundown of what's going on, and we will explain a little bit later more about what's going on here when we do this. But for now, just remember system.out.println. Now there is a difference. Println indicates that we're going to add a new line character at the end of our program. And I'll show you the difference here with our console. So if I type out hello world here, in quotes, quotes are very important. Quotes indicate a string literal. In this case, a string literal means the actual text that we want it to display. So this should print out to the console. Okay? It should print out to the console hello world, very simply. So each code segment should also end with a semicolon. So this is something interesting you may not have learned in other languages if you come from other languages. You do need a semicolon at the end, and this indicates the end of the statement in Java. Here we have another method. We have print versus println. Big difference here is that this does not include a new line character. This one does. So print does not move your cursor to the next line, but println does. Great way to think about it. Some common errors we will experience whenever we're messing around with code, and then we'll run this file. They're going to show up when you're coding, and there are three common types of errors. There are syntax errors that are usually detected by the compiler, and that's because you have incorrectly written syntax. There are runtime errors, which are caused by that cause the program to actually crash unexpectedly. So you're able to compile the code, and it even runs, but when it's running, you get some sort of error that causes it to crash. And then there are logical errors, and these are errors that really don't have anything to do with the way the code is expected to be written, right? The syntax. It has everything to do with what you expect the code to do, so it operates other than your intended method. Some more common errors to think about is you will be finding missing braces, so every open curly brace has to have a closed curly brace. If you're missing a semicolon, this is a very common error and will cause a syntax error. You're missing a quotation mark. If you misspell names, so if you write out a name for one thing but then misspell the name later, the computer will not understand what you're trying to get at there. And then a good thing to practice is to make your own hello world program. All right, and this is every programmer's first program, just sort of by convention. So let's add one more thing to our video here. In our hello world, we need to come up here and add, just so that this will work in our IDE. I have a package I've called functional, and I'm just going to add that up there so that it knows where to find this file. Most of the time you will not need that unless you're doing Java IDE like I am here. Let's see what we print out. So if I hit run, you'll see that we've got hello world and hello world down here at the bottom. Right there. So what's the big difference? Well, let's say that I reversed these. So I'm going to take this line, oops, all the way down to the end. I'm going to copy it and switch the order. So the first time it printed out hello world and hello world both on two different lines. But now, because print does not add a new line character, we're going to see hello world on the same line, and world and hello here, this one and this one, are going to be stuck to each other. So I'm going to save that and hit run, and there it is right there. So that is our first program in Java. It's going to get a lot more complicated from here, and there are always going to be a lot of notes. I hope that you learned something, and thank you for watching Learning with Merit.